Okay, I'd like to call to order. Welcome everybody watching on ITV and via live stream, the regular meeting with all board members present via Zoom webinar. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Okay, to start off our meeting today via Zoom webinar and ITV, I would like to ask for a motion to adopt today's agenda.
So moved.
Okay, moved
Second.
by Trustee Whitehurst-Payne and seconded by Trustee Beiser. I will now call the roll. Barrera, Beiser,
Aye.
McQuarrie, Dr. McQuarrie. Not voting, and Dr. Whitehurst-Payne.
Aye.
As always, I'm going to ask Zachary Patterson, because I start in alphabetical order. That's my problem. Student Trustee Patterson.
Aye.
Okay, and Evans, aye. Okay, so that passes unanimously along with our student board member. Okay, today's meeting of the Board of Education is a business meeting that is conducted in public in compliance with the state of California and the city of San Diego directives for the public to remain home during the coronavirus outbreak. The Board of Education has accepted only written public testimony for this meeting. Written public testimonies, statements will be read into the record at the beginning of the appropriate agenda item or at the end of the meeting for non-agenda public comment. And as has been publicized on the district website, the items are read in the order received, so we go through as many as we can within the time limit, and we are limiting each item to each testimony to 150 words as for those that are submitted as of 9 a.m. on the day of the board meeting. Okay, we have no actions to report on closed session, and now we will go to Superintendent Martin for administrative assignments.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. The management appointments for this evening are Area Superintendent for Area 3, Christina Casillas, Director of Payroll and Benefits, Timothy Fournier, Instructional Support Officer, Maria Montgomery, Principal Barnard Elementary School, Barbara Waller, Principal Carson Elementary School, Eileen Moreno, Principal Challenger Middle School, Eric Sullivan, Principal Grant K-8, Michelle Kane, Principal Montgomery Middle School, Sarah Trueblood, Principal Muirlands Middle School, Jeff Luna, Principal Sessions Elementary School, Casey Lang, Principal Sunset View Elementary School, Jennifer O'Connor, Vice Principals for K-8 Support, Peter Coons, Jesse Salas, Michelle Williams, Brittany Daly, and Eric Wilson, and Vice Principal for Marshall Elementary School, Amy Smith, and Program Specialist for Special Education, Allison Cardenas.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we move on to, I guess we do not have any ASB reports as our students have graduated. So we'll now turn to the superintendent's information report.
Thank you, President Evans. So opening day is now 69 days away, and I'm happy to announce that we have a state budget and that budget is moving in the right direction and helping us with our reopening plans, but there are still some serious financial challenges that remain ahead of us. California has, in fact, come together and used every lever at its disposal to help us reopen schools, and yet there will be significant challenges across the state. San Diego Unified, same. It's what we know is it's time for the federal government to act now. Our state government did its part and used every lever at its disposal, as I said, for reopening schools, and a federal crisis requires a federal response. A federal emergency like this requires a federal response. So our attention now needs to focus on the support of the federal government for nationally our public schools to be able to open across the country. We have much more to say about that next week at our board meeting on the budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we will move to individual board member information reports. Let's start with student board member Patterson.
Good evening, everyone. Since we last met for a regular board meeting, obviously it's been quite a difficult time in our nation. As we remembered the death of George Floyd last week at our board governance meeting, I think we really embarked upon a new journey for our school district. I want to begin this evening by not just saying that I recognize and support the movement led by Black Lives Matter, but that on behalf of the thousands of students in the school district that are fighting for racial justice, I hear you, this Board of Education hears you, and our district hears all of our collective student voices. We need reform. And while I'm proud to say that San Diego Unified has done that in the past, I know that our work is hardly complete. We must continue to fight in an effort to create a more equitable education system. That doesn't discriminate based off race, and we must continue to fight for an education system that gives every student what they need and when they need it. We must provide an environment where every student feels safe and is motivated to go to school. When I joined this board last year, I remember being so disappointed by looking at the rate of students that report feeling meaningfully engaged in their education system. In the 2018-2019 school year, for 9th grade students, it was reported that 25% of students felt meaningfully engaged in their education system in San Diego Unified. And we are changing. We are reforming. I was elected to the board last year as the first student member, and we're seeing other changes as well. But to get to the place where we can have students feeling safe in their system, feeling safe in their school system, and feeling engaged, motivated, and a part of a system that we want to create where students are actively changing the schools they're working in, then we need to listen and be open about our movement to include student voice and to listen to all students. There is a movement out there calling for school police reform, and it's important that we listen to students, and especially our students of color, because their movement is built on student experiences themselves. And we need to recognize their experiences and be a partner in providing the high quality education that we promise to every single student of the district. We can't leave any student behind. And I think that tonight is a really great step moving forward, because we are every student every day for a better San Diego. And I want to be able to say that with confidence, and I want to know that every student feels safe to be in their school system. And I'm excited to embark on that this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zachary. Okay, Trustee Barrera.
Yeah, and we'll take up many of the issues that Trustee Patterson just raised further down on our agenda. I just want to congratulate the class of 2020. You know, in particular in my district, the students at San Diego High, Hoover High, Garfield, East Village High. It's tremendous time in the lives of our students, and it's certainly not the graduation that they expected, but our board asked our schools to design graduation celebrations that captured the spirit of their schools, as well as being safe, as well as allowing for student voice in their creation. And you know, seeing what happened on graduation day and at many of our schools, we saw that spirit of individual, you know, schools come out, and the celebrations were powerful. I know we all want to have a time where the class of 2020 can come back and physically celebrate their graduations, but I think the celebrations that we actually had were very, very meaningful. And I look forward to the summer school graduation coming up later this summer.
Thank you, Trustee Beiser.
I'll defer my time.
Okay, and Trustee McQuarrie.
Same, but again, congratulations to the class of 2020. I know we're all looking forward to the summer. We've got a big summer planning to get into. We want to be able to be prepared for the opening of next year, August 31. So the action the board took at the last meeting sets the direction for the district, and now we have staff and parents and schools planning to see what that would look like. And with the budgets that have recently been passed, being considered at the state level, we're moving forward. We do need funding from federal with the HEROES Act in order to fully open in the quality and the manner that we wish.
Thank you, Trustee McQuarrie. And Trustee Whitehurst Payne. You're on mute.
Thank you. I'd like to say congratulations to the class of 2020. They're definitely unique. I'd like to talk a little bit about Black Lives Matter, but I'll save it to until we get to item F2. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Trustee Whitehurst Payne. And as everybody has mentioned, we have two big things going on with the pandemic and with the Black Lives Matter movement that has come to the forefront. And we've made a very bold and ambitious plan to open our schools on August 31st. We decided that we could not afford to have our kids out of school any longer. There are a lot of things that need to be figured out. There are a lot of sacrifices that are going to need to be made by parents and teachers and staff and everybody in terms of making this work for the education of our students and also for the safety of our students. And we will be working on that this summer to bring it to fruition. And obviously, as the others have mentioned, the key element is going to be that we get the federal funding that we need. And it's not just for us, it's for all of the public schools across the nation. Okay, at this point, we are going to move on to student instructional matters, and we're going to look at the 2020-2021 early learning plan. Superintendent Martin, this is an action item. Is there a board motion on this item?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Beiser. And is there a second? Seconded by Trustee McQuarrie. Okay, and now let's have Superintendent Martin and staff present this item.
Thank you, President Evans. Tonight's presentation is on early learning is about ensuring equitable outcomes for our students, and our approach is to improve the instructional program for our earliest learners. The plan that you'll hear tonight is possible due to what we saw around the innovative changes that were approved by the California legislature to expand the enrollment of our young 4-year-olds in TK programs rather than only having a preschool option. So for our purposes, this means fully credentialed teachers will be providing instruction to our earliest learners. And in order to ensure equitable access for students with disabilities, this plan allows us or sets forth changes that will occur in the 2021 school year, as well as a description of the stakeholder engagement and the feedback process that we used to revise the plan over the past 4 months. And finally, this plan describes what the ongoing engagement process will be that will occur this summer and into the fall. And to present tonight, I believe I have Sarah Ott and Stephanie Szyminski. If you can each introduce yourselves and help present this item.
Good evening, Superintendent Martin and Board of Trustees. My name is Stephanie Szyminski, and together with Sarah Ott, Executive Director of Special Education, Jim Solo, Executive Director of Leadership and Learning, and Acacia Thede, Chief Human Resource Officer, we lead the early learning programs where I serve as director. Tonight, my colleagues and I are pleased to present to you the details and updates for the 2021 Early Learning Plan. At the heart of the plan is an innovative approach to increasing the quality of instruction for our earliest learners. This presentation will highlight the instructional benefits for students, the options for parents, as well as next steps for continuous collaboration, feedback loops, and purposeful planning through a work group model. Updates in progress will also continually be presented and shared through a revised plan to the Board of Education at the end of the calendar year. To restate that this evening, the early learning presentation will include details on the input process, the program models for 2021, and the staffing model for the 2021 school year. In addition, this presentation will discuss next steps that include the implementation process and the design around the work group and recommendations for change during the 2021 school year. Overall, our work is about widening the sphere of success by engineering equitable learning conditions for all students. We believe classrooms can be places of hope, where teachers and students imagine the kind of society we can live in, where educators design meaningful and inclusive educational experiences in order for our students to be agents of change and make this hope a reality. To recap and share in a timeline of how the input process began and moved through the physical closure of the school sites is that it began in February with a principal informational meeting, and that also informational meetings with bargaining units, SDEA and PARA. In March, we also held informational meetings with preschool and ECSC employees, including the teachers and para educators. In April, we continued with an information exchange with bargaining units and also shared a conceptual framework that was presented to SDEA and a parent interest group. This framework included revisions based on feedback that we received during February and April. In May, meetings with SDEA and a parent interest group were provided feedback on the conceptual framework presented in April. Their recommendations have been highlighted and incorporated into this plan alongside year-long recommendations and goals that'll be addressed during the study year. One thing that we know is that we sometimes can't plan for uncertainty, even though we all would love to. And knowing what's at our heart and knowing what is guiding the focus on supporting all of our students allows us to continually work and provide feedback and provide that collaboration and continuous growth with the plan. So even though the plan might not be perfect in its current sense, as a leader of the early learning team, we are committed to making it perfect and making it beneficial for our students and staff in the best way that we can. So in June, most recently, we've held informational meetings with XE teachers to review this plan and discuss which components will be implemented during the 2021 school year, which could happen right now, and those that will be addressed in the study year. A meeting was held with XE teachers to gather consensus to move forward with what we could implement now and what will we commit to studying and providing collaboration on. And in summary, the stakeholder committee met twice as a whole team with a personal phone call between executives and parents and 2 additional meetings with XE teachers. To summarize the TK4 program that Superintendent Martin shared that we've talked about before was San Diego Unified is one of the highest leader in leading early learning initiatives. I'm a part of a statewide PLC committee, and they look to San Diego Unified to see what we're doing, to see what we're going to do next, or what we think about the program. And annually, I'm so proud to know that San Diego Unified invests its resources and programs and to provide this high quality instruction to our youngest learners. So I'm so grateful for that. So in beginning 2021 school year, the district has built this solid continuity across the early learning by developing a rich cross system of relationships to leverage our resources, maximize our expertise, and ensure continuous improvement. To meet this objective, the district's expanding its 4-year-old students into our TK classrooms and also offer that preschool experience in 3-year-old part-day blended classrooms throughout areas of San Diego Unified. One of the main driving forces of this program is the state of California's focus on early learning in San Diego Unified and being a part of this initiative. Back in 2010, when they expanded early TK in our schools, it supported our 4-year-olds. But since then, they've allowed our 4-year-olds that would qualify for preschool to be commingled into our classroom under a credentialed teacher. And one thing unique about our program that sets this aside from any other program, expanded TK, early TK, is the fact that our students will receive a educational environment with not only a credentialed TK teacher, but also that ECE teacher to collaborate, co-teach, to talk about the continuum of age-appropriate curriculum and instructional pieces, also that social emotional piece of that student that is moving to kindergarten. It also provides small ratios where they're going to receive support from 2 teachers in the classroom and a free full-day educational program where they're aligned to the school calendar and bell. So often we've heard families want to participate in Family Friday or attend events at their school, and due to the restrictions that California preschools were bound by, that we weren't able to free up that time so families could participate on a large scale. And by involving our schools and our classrooms with this legislation allows our early learning students to be part of our school system from the beginning. One of the initiatives that came in during our discussions of this amazing legislation in San Diego Unified's participation in it was the need for our students with disabilities to be 100% included in this process. And so a survey was sent out to the families that were eligible to be in a 4-year-old program, and just to find out who is interested in a full day option or who would like to embark on this setting. And a number of families were expressed interest. Right now, in our 4TK enrollment portal, we have over 900 families in there, and we're so excited. And they want to know, when can we start? We heard that school's coming back in August, so we want to be part of it. So that's really exciting to know that that they want to be part of it too. So as we begin the work of implementing changes to the program and the changes and the physical closure of our schools aren't going to stop us. We continually want to utilize the feedback and collaboration. And Margaret Wheatley has a quote that sets the stage for what we're about to embark on. Through determination, energy, and courage appear spontaneously when we care deeply about something. We take risks that are unimaginable in any other context. And like I shared before, sometimes you can't plan for the unknown, but one thing we do know is that we care about all our students and we want the best environment for them. So with that, I will turn it over to the Executive Director of Special Education, Sarah Ott, who will share the program models as well as options for parents of our 3- and 4-year-old students.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to share with you the program options for parents, as we know choice for parents is very essential. As Stephanie shared earlier, the plan was shared with stakeholders in late May and discussed in early June. Our goal was to ensure equal for all students with disabilities as required by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. We also wanted parents to have a choice in their options. You'll notice in the first box, it outlines a transition classroom. I'd like to clarify that this option is not a permanent placement. It is a space for children to attend 6 to 8 weeks to learn specific skills in order to safely transition into one of our settings. It was created based on feedback from a group of teachers and parents who met during the 1920 school year. It was also recommended by the Least Restrictive Environment Committee that is in partnership with SDEA. This is a specialized setting for a very small portion of students who meet the criteria. The entry point for most of our students with disabilities will be in the general education blended setting. This option would be for 3-year-olds to attend a part-day program. Students that require a more restrictive environment will be in the separate setting, and this is also AM/PM. Parents of students who want that equal access, just as their general ed peers, will have a place at the table during their IEP meeting to talk about placement. Parents can choose if they have age-eligible 4-year-olds to be in a full-day TK4 classroom and in the full-day 4 TK transition classroom with their general education peers. The final piece of the continuum is our current TK and kindergarten classrooms. Here's a list of the schools that will offer each program next year. Within each setting, students can now attend 5 days a week. Some students previously, if they had a disability, were only offered 4 days. Parents, however, can still choose a 4-day option if that is what is best for their family. Peer models or reverse mainstreamers will continue within the separate setting classrooms. Our blended and separate students attend AM, PM part day, 5 days a week. And now we have the option for full days in our pilot program for separate setting, as well as general education settings. I will now turn it back over to Stephanie.
So, in wishing and hoping that we could be in every cluster and every school throughout the district in time, I do want to highlight how for the 2021 school year, how the locations were selected. So some of the things that we follow through trend analysis and data is, number one, existing preschool program that had a 3-year-old children to promote into the 4 TK program. So using our current enrollment, finding out their school of residence, finding out interest, and analyzing that trend where they would promote into the general education TK4 program. Also for locations that would provide the maximum opportunity for inclusion. Number 3, analysis of past enrollment data. Number 4, the high percentage of students who are income eligible. And number 5, schools eligible under the community eligibility provision, where if a school is 80% or above free and reduced lunch, any student that is living in that attendance area, regardless of income, may enroll with space provided.
We will now turn it over to our Chief Human Resource Officer, Acacia, to talk about staffing.
Good evening, everyone. I have a slide that seems small but mighty. And so we are going to outline the staff positions and support that are assigned for the 4 programs. I'd like to note that the slide generated a number of questions which I'm going to address as part of this discussion. So I'll begin with the separate setting that's in the first column. The separate setting preschool is an AM/PM program for 3 and 4-year-old students. It would be staffed by an early childhood special education teacher. That's what the acronym ECSE refers to. And a minimum of 2 special education technicians. That is the acronym SET that you see on the chart. While teaching assignments are static for the most part in our system, and they're static based on contractual class sizes, our assignment for paraeducators, and in this particular case, the classification is named an SET or a special education technician, are assigned based on the needs of students outlined in IEPs. So this slide is intended to show you a base level of staffing. What we can't show you in this format is that when a student has a need, and that need can't be met by the existing staffing allocation, we add additional paraeducator staff to support that need. So each classroom, each student is individually reviewed and looked at, and we consistently look at it both at the beginning of the year and when there are changes to student IEPs, whether that's a student moving in, moving out, or has some kind of change in their IEP during the school year. And this is a process that we use for paraeducator assignments throughout the year. And so I wanted to make sure that that was clear. We have a small area in parentheses there, but I wanted to explain that more fully. Next, I'd like to take a look at the second column, which is the blended preschool model. This is also an AM/PM program for 3-year-olds And there's 8 students with disabilities per session in this. The staffing for the blended classroom includes 1 early childhood special education teacher, 1 early childhood education teacher, 2 child development center assistants, and again, a minimum of 2 SETs. You'll notice that the slide is different from the one that's posted in board documents, and that's because earlier today it was brought to our attention that there was a typing error. That typing error caused a significant amount of concern and questions because of one word, and we do apologize for that. You'll note that the word assistant is highlighted. The one presented in the board documents is the word attendant, and they are 2 different classifications. Our intention was never to use attendants. It was always to use assistants. And in our conversations and discussions, we've always said assistants. Unfortunately, we just had a typing error in our public document. So that will be corrected and it will be put into the record later tonight. Child Development Center assistants are paraeducators who are trained to both support instructional and physical needs of students and have worked in this type of model classroom for a number of years. In fact, the blended classroom model is essentially the same as it is in this current school year. The third column is our TK separate setting for students who need this option. As Sarah discussed earlier, parents have options for their students based on their need and settings. So this classroom is staffed with 1 early childhood special education teacher, and again, 2 SETs with the caveat that it's a minimum based on the student needs. The final setting is the 4 TK setting. This setting includes both a multiple subject credentialed teacher as well as an ECE teacher. This is the model that Stephanie led with, and this is the model that we are extremely excited about as it provides 2 highly trained educators to provide support to our earliest learners. It's important to note as part of this plan that we are continuing an important conversation around the supports for students with disabilities in the 4 TK setting. It's a discussion that we talked at length about in the stakeholder process that Stephanie and Sarah previously shared, but it is something that we're going to continue to study. And that is a discussion around who is providing the support to students with disabilities in the 4 TK setting. For the current school year, there'll be an education specialist with a mild moderate credential. There's a discussion on also having maintenance of a early childhood special education teacher to provide supports to those students. We believe that for the 2021 school year, the plan as presented today provides students with a daily support of a mild moderate education specialist, rather than the current model, which provides itinerant XE teachers who are only available for part of the week or less than part of the week. The next component is around some notes in the bottom. So in the note at the bottom, you'll see that the transitional classroom setting and class size are the same as the separate setting above. There was also a significant amount of discussion in our stakeholder process on how teacher preparation time was going to be provided. And so we will be providing teacher preparation time by a combination of itinerant staff and preparation time for 4 TK through the current processes that is used in our elementary settings. One of the things I wanted to specifically highlight in this slide are some options that were included as a part of the early learning stakeholder process that we have. Those were maintaining a 2-year program for 3- and 4-year-old students, maintaining a separate setting for part-time programs, and maintaining classrooms in the clusters where they are. We also this evening are including and shared and have previously provided additional details about the program locations that are offered, detailed information about the number of days for each program offering, additional preparation time and process to do that for teachers, and then also really highlighting the number of parent choices based on student need. The next slide that I have is another very exciting component of this process. So as Stephanie led with, no plan will be perfect, especially in a time of a pandemic, but we have a way to not only study what we're doing, but we're also have a way to bring that back and bring it to the board. So the 2021 school year will be used as a study year, and we are going to follow up with a XE work group. It will include teachers, parents, principals, and paraeducators. We will use data around enrollment, facility space, interventions, research around best practices, looking at data from the field. We have a pilot as a part of this program where we're looking at 5 schools who will have a full day setting in the earliest areas so that we can see where the best parts of this are and where there's room for improvement. That study committee, Sarah, if you go ahead and advance to the next slide, is listed here. So this work group will include teachers, parents, principals, and paraeducators. The work group will review data and research best practices to make recommendations for EXI classroom locations within the early learning continuum for the 2021-2022 school year. The committee will review data from the EXI classrooms to make recommendations related to professional development, caseload, case management, and options for 4-year-old students. We will then present the recommendation to the Board of Education, and then we will also discuss teacher preparation time and workload and make recommendations to the bargaining team, because some of the recommendations that we expect will more than likely come through will have bargaining implications. We'd like to note how we plan to select the work group. So our intent is to be as inclusive as possible and to provide as many objective voices as we can, as well as those with experience. So our intention is to send an interest survey to all parents of currently enrolled students, current EXI teachers, site leaders, and paraeducators. We'll also request representatives from our parent CAC and our bargaining unit representatives. The survey results are going to be reviewed, and we'll be able to select participants who believe all means all, early learning, knowledge, and expertise, as well as a solution-seeking stance. In order for us to move forward and be inclusive, be collaborative, gather true input, true feedback, and find a way to move forward with a plan, is that we have to involve members who are willing to work within our values and as the way that we have high expectations for ourselves and within our communities, and those same values that we have for our students. There's been a significant, I shouldn't say significant, there has been some concern voiced that our use of the term objective is intended to somehow alienate people, and that's not the choice. That's not what we're looking at. We truly, when we create work groups, when we create and bring people together, we work to build norms together. We work to build collaboration processes together. We look to identify what the problem is and how to solve it. And we look for multiple points in the way to do that. And I'm going to outline that, the process that we intend to use as a part of this. So Sarah, if you go ahead and go to the next slide. So our tentative work group outline that's presented before the board this evening is presented as tentative because as long as the board approves our plan, and that is going to be our recommendation at the end of this, our intention is to immediately begin the process to select the work group and begin on this timeline. We will be using this timeline in one of our first meetings to ensure that we're on the right track, to ensure that this makes sense to those who are on the work group, to make changes as we go if necessary, and to be very reflective in our practice and make sure that we are all on the same page. We also have in mind at this point a true start and a goal end date to ensure that we can engage in productive conversations that lead us toward a path of decision making and a place where maybe we'll find that, you know, we might need some more information in some areas, but we can move on some decisions in another area. So this timeline begins in June and July of this year. We intend to select the work group members and have our first meeting so we can set up our norms, look at our timeline, and make sure that we have the things that we need. We will look at, there will be a summer training held for educators that we have started discussing in early February. And that training is intended for the co-teaching and team teaching models that you saw in the staff slide that I presented, slide 10. So you'll notice that there are teams of educators who are working together that include both teachers and paraeducators. And our intention is to give them time and space to plan these classrooms, because we recognize that some of these pairings of educators and paraeducators may be new. And we know that they will need some time to get to know one another, and then also plan instruction and get to know their students together. That's what our plan is for the summer. Then we will have monthly meetings for the work group in July. And go ahead, Sarah, advance to that slide. We will continue with ongoing training of staff at the same time, with an intention to then bring back to the board a report on what the work group has done for the past few months, including based on data, what the recommendations are for the 2021-22 school year. And then from there, at the December board report in December, we would ask again for the board to take more action on that plan for the following school year. And then we would engage in any processes that were required for bargaining that would impact any of the units of the employees. Okay, Sarah. And so I will end and thank the board and everyone who participated. There has been a significant amount of effort on behalf of teachers, SDA, parents, and this team to bring this plan forward to today. And there are so many moments of joy and hope, and there are so many essential elements of this plan that are going to bring such a wonderful level of instruction and support for students that we are recommending that the board approve the early learning plan as presented for the 2021 school year. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. And it's also very impressive that all the staff has continued to work on this, even during the pandemic. You know, such a good job and not letting up on it, even in this difficult time. At this point, we can have questions and comments. First of all, let's hear public testimony. As again, just going through the first 150 words of the testimony. Ms. Stoltz will read the comments, and if you would read as many as you can get through, they're being read in the order received during a 10-minute time limit for those opposed, and then there will be another moment for a person in support.
Yes, we have 12 comments from folks opposed and 1 comment from in support. So for those opposed, the first one is from Nicole Horn. My name is Nicole Horn, and my daughter, Marley Carranza, is a preschool student in Limburg, Schweitzer. She would be qualifying for TK4 for the 2020-2021 year. Marley is my second child to have attended Limburg, Schweitzer, my first being my son, Gavin Hearn. We do love this school. I'm writing to urge the school district to continue TK for 4 years as an optional part and full-time program at Limburg Schweitzer. Early learning program has been an excellent avenue for my child to gradually enter school. We started this journey when she was 3, knowing we would have 2 years of 3-hour late morning classes to prepare her for a full 6-hour day of kindergarten. We've learned recently that come 2020-2021, that for her age, part-time is no longer an option. TK4 would be full-time. San Diego Unified Limburg Schweitzer School, this decision has been taken without soliciting feedback from the parents. I've been told this is what parents wanted, but I do find that hard to believe, as both part-time classes had plenty of 4-year-olds that wanted to be in a 3-hour class. Now to find out that only 4-year-olds with actual disabilities can be eligible for part day. Just because my daughter doesn't have a disability, must she be forced to do full day? This is forcing our children to grow up too fast. Let them be children. 4 is too young to apply such a schedule without the choice of the parent. I feel it's very important for both 3 and 4-year-olds to be together, as well as they help one another, the 3-year-olds giving the 4-year-olds opportunity to be the bigger kid and help with responsibilities and look after the younger ones. And the 4-year-olds lead and guide the 3-year-olds and kind of show them the ropes. I believe there is a social aspect to this that they will all be missing out on if we don't combine the classes and allow for the part-time. The next comment is from Debbie Childs. I have been an ECSE teacher for the past 22 years. I have never felt the stress of teaching as I do right now. When you are considering the changes that are being proposed for our program, please ask yourself why. Why should we even consider these changes right now? I am extremely concerned about the lack of forethought, lack of planning, and extremely poor communication within the special education department. There are major decisions that need to be made regarding the reopening of schools. This should not be one of them. Thank you. The next comment is from E.B. Sorensen. Dear board members, I urge you not to approve the early learning plan until the stakeholder process has been properly concluded. My name is E.B. Sorensen, and I am one of 2 ECSE parents involved in the stakeholder process. The stakeholder process has not been completed, and I do not agree with the presented plan for approval. There are glaring errors that need correction, the biggest being that there is no mention of peer models being enrolled in the separate setting preschool classes. This is a high priority for parents in light of COVID-19 restrictions limiting their students' access to peers. Please read the attachment for detailed information regarding the errors in the early learning plan presentation. This attachment was emailed to all board members, ECSE stakeholder members, district employees involved in the stakeholder process to inform them of the problems in the presentation that need attention. And there is a lengthy attachment that was provided to the trustees. The next comment is from Emily Forgeron. Do not approve the early learning plan as presented today. I am one of 2 parents with a child in the current ECSE program who has been a member of the ECSE Stakeholder Planning Group. We had 2 group meetings in May. We never met a final time as we requested to see this plan. As a group, we should have been provided an opportunity to provide feedback and further recommendations before today. I'm disappointed and frustrated that district staff, particularly the special ed department, continues to disregard fully involving both ECSE teachers and parents in the stakeholder planning process for this very important program. Do not approve this plan until all stakeholders are able to provide feedback and come to a formal agreement that the final presented plan is appropriate, accurate, and comprehensive, covering all the necessary details for our children in these proposed placements across the district. The next comment is from Andrea Green. I implore the board members not to approve this plan as it is presented because the stakeholder process has not been completed. In addition, the plan does not include key pieces of information like peer models being included in separate setting classrooms or having an ECSE teacher case manage 4-year-olds in the TK4 setting. The next comment is from Christina Gallegos. As a member of the stakeholder group and an ECSE teacher, I do not support the proposed early learning plan. This is a fail-first model. There were only 2 stakeholder meetings. The last teacher meeting was informational, not collaborative. None of the teacher suggestions were included with the exception of the pilot program. They ultimately said no to the teacher suggestions, agreeing to study the need for them, study what the teachers have already formally studied and experienced in class. This 4/TK plan also targets the most vulnerable student populations, early childhood, low-income students with disabilities. These children deserve more than the bare minimum. They deserve teachers who are properly trained and educated. 1 to 2 trainings over the summer cannot compare to years of education and experience all ECSE teachers have. If you say you want to help children, help them by not approving this plan. They deserve more, they deserve better. The next comment is from Julie Watson. As a separate class teacher, I frequently transition students to the general education blended class. Our current Gen Ed blended model offers an ECE teacher, ECSE credential teacher, and 2 SETs. The new model, however, will remove the ECSE teacher and the SETs from the class. With less individualized instruction and supports for students as young as 3, inclusion will decrease with teachers being less likely to move their students on with so few supports. Mild moderate teachers will now become providers for students as young as 3 entering 4/TK. However, ECSE teachers are the credential holders for the special ed students age birth to 5. We earn credentials, masters, and completed months of practicum that cannot be substituted with simple district trainings. So while some of the proposed changes may benefit general education students, I believe our most vulnerable may suffer at a time when more focused and intensive support is needed. The next comment is from Erin Grettenberger. I want to thank you for last week's community testimony regarding the reopening of our schools during this pandemic. The district has approximately 8 weeks to strategically plan and implement a tremendous feat. Given the incredible task we are all facing, I urge you not to approve the early learning plan until the stakeholder process has been properly concluded. The stakeholder process has not been completed, and I do not agree with the presented plan for approval. We met once as a group, and for some reason, at our second meeting, we were separated. These changes have already impacted families regarding the ability to access the offer of free and appropriate public education for next year. Registration, available sites, transportation, service hours, attendance schedules, access to peers. The stakeholders worked well as a whole group and had made great progress. Unfortunately, after our second meeting, we never received this proposal. There are glaring errors that need correction, as well as missing important details. If the stakeholders had a chance to review this proposal, add the important details that were discussed, we would be in a much better place. Please read the attachment sent by members of the stakeholder group for detailed information regarding errors in the plan. The next comment is from John Sorensen. My name is John Sorensen. I implore you, do not approve the early learning program. The stakeholder process is not complete. There's no mention of peer models being enrolled in separate setting classes, which is a high priority for parents. There are glaring errors and omissions that need correcting. I addressed the board in March about ECSE. At that point, communication from the district about proposed changes was poor at best. Since then, progress has been made through the ECSE stakeholder process toward a fair and equitable plan, despite continued missteps. However, the plan before you was never finalized and presented to the stakeholder group. It appears the district is no longer acting in good faith. Their current gross negligence and glaring incompetence has us reconsidering our legal options to hold the district accountable. Do not approve the early learning plan. The next comment is from Leslie Hoffmeister. It has come to my attention that the board is meeting today and the special education department is going behind the backs of the parents and stakeholders and presenting the early learning plan. Please do not approve the plan as it is presented. The stakeholder process has not been completed and the plan doesn't include key pieces of information like peer models being included in separate setting classrooms or having an ECSE teacher case manage 4-year-olds in the TK4 setting. Thank you for hearing us. I am a concerned parent of a child who has been involved in the ECSE program at Kumeyaay, and I strongly oppose the changes being suggested. The next comment is from Lars Nielsen. I recently became aware of the proposed changes to the ECSE program and felt compelled to voice my opinion. As a clinical social worker, having worked with latency-aged children and their families for years, and a parent of a young child myself, I am troubled by aspects of the proposed plan. It appears families are going to have to choose between quality of services for their children and quality of life for their families. To clarify, a parent who might benefit from having their 3 or 4-year-old child with special needs in a full-day setting, as I imagine many with limited means would, will have to do so without access to early childhood special education professionals. In my estimation, teachers and staff that have dedicated their lives to this profession have a unique skill set and devotion to what they do that should be viewed as a vital resource. And the next comment is from Emily Saft. I strongly urge you not to approve the early childhood proposed plan. We, the ECSE teachers, see many concerns with this plan. Making such a big change to two wonderful essential programs needs time, detailed planning, and perspective. The leadership team has rushed this plan from the very beginning and still does not have crucial pieces organized enough in order to implement it this fall, along with the struggles we are going to face due to COVID-19. We anticipate many issues in the fall, and we do not want to deal with the impact during the school year when the issues could be thought out and planned appropriately beforehand with more time and organization. Do not approve this plan. And the final comment is from Jill Pham. I am writing as a teacher and member of the current stakeholder committee for the ECSE program. I support the program as it is currently laid out to be accepted by the board so that we can begin to study new ways to provide learning opportunities for our youngest children served by the district. 2020-2021 has been designated a study year, and provided this process is undertaken with integrity, we will be able to learn from and then build an ECSE program that provides positive learning opportunities for all children with special needs. Please pass the early learning plan as it has been presented so we can move forward with planning for next year. And that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you, Ms. Stoltz. You said that concludes the public comments, and now we will go to board member comments on questions on this item. Mr. Barrera.
Yeah, thank you, President Evans. So I guess I'll address my questions to Sarah, Stephanie, and Acacia. So when this item came before us a few months ago, we felt that there was clearly not consensus yet among our stakeholders, primarily our parents and teachers. And we asked you to go and do some more work with our stakeholders and come back to us with a plan that reflected a consensus. We've obviously just had a series of comments that people are concerned with the plan moving forward. So I guess my first question is, what was the feedback that you've gotten over the last few months, and what changes to the plan have you incorporated as a result of that feedback? That's my first question. My second question is, with some of the issues that were raised that you just heard in the public comment, I heard three key issues. One was that that the plan wasn't, we didn't have a final meeting of the stakeholders before the plan came before the board. Second, there was a concern about peer models not being present in the plan. And third, there was a concern that in some settings, students would not have access to an early childhood special education teacher. So I wonder if you could address some of the concerns that you just heard in the comments. So first question is, what changes did we make in this as a result of the process over the last few months? And how would you address some of the concerns that you just heard tonight in the public comment?
Start, and then Acacia and Stephanie, please chime in. Some of the changes we made is in our initial plan, we had all 4-year-olds in a full day program. So we made a change to offer a 3 and 4 a.m. p.m. option that students with disabilities in the separate setting could be part of. In our initial plan, we had different schools that would offer separate setting to have inclusion alignment with classrooms that had general ed. In the revised plan, we've kept the school sites to remain the same as they are currently, and we did not change locations of school sites based on input. The third piece is the transition classroom that the teachers and the LRE committees requested to have a transition classroom for students who were nonverbal and did not have listening skills to learn those skills to be able to be part of a classroom. It's something that we've had in our districts prior, and they wanted to bring that back. So that was incorporated into the plan. The previous plan, didn't have something where we talked about pilot schools. So we, instead of moving everything back to the way it was, we did get a parent who did a survey and noticed that 30% of families did want a full day program. And so there are 5 pilot schools that were recommended as a part of the plan and were brought forward. And so that was taken as feedback. And we did have a meeting with, we had a phone call with the parents where we sent them, it was in a different form, but it was the same plan. And shared what options we would be able to implement this year and what things we would be able to look at and study over the course of next year. And we did what we thought was the final meeting. One of the parents did reach out to me, and I emailed her back and have not heard. And then the second meeting that we had with teachers, Stephanie and I led, and we asked for consensus at the end, and we got consensus from all teachers except for one. Every teacher did agree with the plan to move forward based on the conversations we had. So we did know in the plan originally that was submitted, as Acacia alluded to, there were some errors that we were able to fix based on the input that we did get. One of those was peer models. We have always said within the stakeholder engagement that reverse mainstreamers or peer models would be able to continue in the separate setting classrooms. And so that was added onto the slide to indicate that was left off on accident. just because it was something that has been in practice and will continue to be in practice. And so that was something that was left off the original plan that was with stakeholder input added back into the plan. I think that's all. Okay, sure. Stephanie, do you have more things that we added from stakeholder input?
I do. We added a couple significant things in terms of staffing. If you recall, we withdrew at the March 10th meeting an item in the board item that indicated that we were going to lay off XC teachers. That did not happen. And then we also took action in late April to recall ECE teachers that had been issued layoff notices. And both of those significant staffing changes are directly to enhance this plan and to ensure our earliest learners, especially with the concerns around learning loss or concerns about anything that's happening with kiddos in either the general ed or special ed settings, they will need some support and they'll need additional support. I think something that's really important to clarify, and I discussed this a little bit in March, but it's been some time. So there are highly skilled individuals who will support these classrooms. We have multiple subject credentials teachers who at least have a BA, and most of them have a master's degree. Multiple subject credentialed teachers have an expertise in early learning. It's similar, not the same, and I don't want to discount it, but multiple subject credentialed teachers are highly skilled individuals. We also have early childhood special education teachers, again, highly skilled individuals. We have a plethora of really amazing XE teachers in our system. And we want to take advantage of their expertise by putting them in places where they will support students. We have early childhood education specialists, or ECE teachers, across the system who will be supporting in both general ed and special ed settings. What we've designed for our 4TK classrooms is so amazing. When you look at the level of education that these individuals have, what people may not understand is that in the state of California, people who work in early childhood education do have requirements. They receive licensure. It's called a permit in the California credentialing system that requires them to have advanced education, advanced learning, and they have actually 6 different tiers of permits that they can get. And they earn that through increasing their educational experience. We have a very experienced ECE teacher group, and they will be essential to enhancing the learning for our students in our 4TK programs. Just in the way that these teacher pairings work, it is phenomenal for us to, and maybe just because I'm an HR nerd and a credentials nerd, but there is such a opportunity for us to have these highly skilled individuals to be supporting our earliest learners. So those staffing changes, I think, are huge change that we made.
I just want to add one thing onto what Acacia just said in terms of the staffing. One thing that I don't want to go unnoticed is that these school sites with these classrooms and these amazing teachers is led by an amazing principal. And they're part of our stakeholders as well. And they believe in this program. In February, when we met with them, they couldn't wait for the next meeting. The schools were closed, and they were like, "Well, how are we going to get our banner up?" They are just as excited about it and want to embrace this program and embrace this new challenge and be part of this process as well and help lead these teachers. So I do want to highlight that. One of the principals in this last meeting that we had with them, she used the word catapult. And forever it's ingrained in my brain. She said, our students they're going to catapult into our schools, into our learning environment. And that's true. Like they could have up to 3 solid years of early learning. No other district is offering that. And the opportunity that we can give, surrounded by this collaboration of that from executive leadership to community partners in our towns. What we have the ability to do is pretty amazing. So I want to add them as a critical stakeholder as well.
One of the other areas I wanted to mention that I previously hadn't was just the amount of options for families. So in our original plan, it really was you either went here or here. And we heard loud and clear from the parents on our committee that based on their survey and the things they gave us that they wanted options.
So they do have options. We want to ensure kids can go 5 days a week, and that's the offer for all kids, whether they have a disability or not, but parents can opt to 4 days if they choose. They don't have to attend the 5 days. Students with disabilities in the separate setting can have an option to be in AM, PM, or in the 4-year-old pilot program. So there's a lot more options that are now built in that weren't before. I did want to talk a little bit about staffing that Acacia brought up. We did talk about ECSE itinerant teachers supporting students in the TK4 classrooms. TK4 classrooms will have about 2 to 4 students with disabilities in them, and so a very small number. Some of the students will be students that have speech and language only IEPs and do not require special ed academic instruction from an early childhood special ed teacher or a mild moderate ed specialist. Some students have about 250 students currently that are 4-year-olds have over maybe 1 hour a month, maybe 1 hour a week. And then some students have more significant levels of support that we will review and have paraeducator staff as needed. So we have some classrooms that may need very little special education support and some classrooms who may need more. And so that's where we call on our mild moderate ed specialists who are already on site and oftentimes on site full time to support the students, as opposed to an early childhood special ed teacher who's on site, would be itinerant and maybe on site 1 day a week and maybe on site, less than that. So that was what we talked about. However, we heard the teachers' concern and the parents' concern around that. And we, when we met with the teachers, talked about looking at that during the study year. So starting this year with a mild moderate ed specialist and then studying if that was not the best model and we wanted more itinerant ECSE support and for those classrooms, what that would look like. And so in the timeline that Acacia talked about, that's in December that we come and talk and discuss that. So if the plan's not working, we have an avenue to make changes based on what we're hearing.
Yeah, I just want to, I appreciate the detail of your responses, Sarah, Acacia, and Stephanie. And I think the detail of your responses reflects the work that you've done over the past several months in this process to listen, to be creative, to be flexible. And I think the plan that you're presenting tonight is a plan that opens up options, number one. But number two is what you've been clear about, from the beginning of the presentation, is the plan is not complete and the process is not complete. And that's why your recommendation is to enter into this study year. I also very much appreciate all of the input that we've gotten from parents and teachers throughout in this process. I think it reflects the Margaret Wheatley quote that you put into the presentation, which is people feel deeply and care deeply, about this program, and that's why people want to be included. And so I do support this plan. I do support the process moving forward. I want to make sure that the process. I understand, the selection process for the work group. And I obviously understand the need to have people who share core values and are solution oriented. I would hope and I would expect, given the way that you work, that some of the people who are most skeptical about this plan right now are in fact included, in the work group if they want to be included, because I think that's where we really push ourselves to do better in the way that you have over the past few months. And I would also hope that for people who can't participate in the work group, that there's ample opportunity for the work group to get ongoing feedback from parents and teachers. And so that when the revised plan comes to the board in December, we know that there's been ample opportunity for people to comment and to participate. But I thank you for your work. I thank everybody who's been part of this process going forward, and I'm certainly prepared to support this plan tonight.
Thank you, Trustee Barrera. And at this point, other board members who want to make comments or ask questions. Trustee Whiter-Spain.
I Thank you for this opportunity to share. I don't want to be redundant, but the 3 points that really stand out in my mind because I've worked with special education students and teachers at the university at Cal State U San Marcos for 10 years. It's very important about the pilot study. This is going to be a pilot year, which means that it's not, we'll learn from it. We'll be able to take the best from it and modify it going forward. Secondly, there was a comment made that our students who have special needs will not have a special education teacher. And that can't be accurate because by definition, federal law requires that if you have a special education student, then they must be assigned a teacher to work with them according to the IEP. So that point, I think Ms. Ferreira made a good point. And then the best part of it all to me is the fact that you have options. You can do 3-4 hours a day, or you can do all day. So I think from my perspective, this is probably a good model. And I would also encourage staff to continue to try to win parents and other staff members over. Thank you.
Thank you. Other board members? Trustee McQuarrie.
Yeah, I also want to support the comments that have already been made by Trustee Barrera and Trustee Whitehurst-Payne, so I won't reiterate those. But I do want to emphasize the importance of a robust work group, and the study year is extremely important, be able to have the voices heard, and then to be able to have an opportunity to mitigate and to modify and to improve the program as we go forward. So I think it's a great plan. My question is it the right time? And with dealing with the coronavirus, and I'm wondering what accommodations are you making with the issues that we might have if we have an increase of virus and we have to shut the program down, and so what you're thinking on addressing some of the options that we may have to deal with going forward with the coronavirus.
So all of us have been intimately involved in the reopening process. And so early learning is not separate or apart from the rest of the instructional program in the district. And we have absolutely, as Stephanie shared, included these classrooms, these programs as part of our reopening process. Our kids are our kids, whether they're 3 or whether they're 22 in our TRACE program. We will provide a safe environment for children returning back in the program that their parents choose for them to return in, whether it's on-site, whether it's a combination, whatever the parents choose, we will provide a safe instructional environment and quality staff to work with. So that's the best answer I can give, Dr. Mike, but that's our commitment that the team shared last week to yourself and the rest of the community. And that's what we intend to do for this program as well.
Okay, other board members? Yes, Trustee Patterson.
Yeah, so I guess my question would be, I don't want you to speculate, but I just want to understand. So, I mean, there were 12 comments opposed submitted and 1 for, and my thought process behind that is all of the things they said in there, I mean, specifically stakeholder engagement, you mentioned how we did go through that, but I would ask, why do you think they're saying these things then? Would you, I mean, I don't want you to invalidate any of their concerns, but it is a little confusing that they're completely saying we really didn't feel included at all, and then I'm hearing on the other end that we completely included them, and I just wanted to understand that a little bit better.
Who would like to respond to that one?
I can try. I've engaged, Stephanie and I have engaged in the preschool committee for a whole entire year prior to talking about the changes. And then we additionally engaged in the stakeholder engagement from the last board meeting. And so throughout that whole engagement and listening process, we've had people in the process who felt that they were not involved to a certain degree. And I think sometimes when we gave them the final product in a 1-page instead of this PowerPoint, which kind of changed the way it looked. And some errors were made. I think people feel possibly that it wasn't to necessary to the level they want. And that is why we started the study year. I think we heard loud and clear that it would take time to do stakeholder engagement when we know we have to plan for reopening. So we do need to have approval of a plan so we can start planning what that looks like for reopening. And so that's why we initiated the study group, is because we felt like there were people within the process that felt like we needed more time and more engagement.
I think I would also add to that, Board Member Patterson, that what's missing from the comments that we shared are that there's a significant number of people who do support it. And so there is, and as you said, not to invalidate the concerns that people had, because we acknowledge that the omission of some information, for instance, peer models, was of a particular importance. And although we have verbally shared and discussed it throughout our conversations, because the information wasn't present on the slide, there are folks who only had access to what was on the slides that we presented on Friday. And so we worked really hard to try to ensure that we had hit every single point. And today we realized we didn't. So we worked really hard before this presentation to ensure that anything that was a concern, that we went back, that we made sure we talked about it in today. And so that was, again, our commitment to this process to ensure that we are sharing information. And I think, quite honestly, doing some of this work in Zoom is hard. You were so great at explaining the impact of your learning this school year and how it's changed. And so sometimes when you're making tough decisions and you're having an engagement, it's challenging to do in this format. And so I wouldn't say it played a big part, but there's something to that. So, hey, Stephanie, anything else that you can think of? Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I think that really does help, and I really appreciate discussing how nothing's extraordinarily final, and we're only moving forward so you guys can have more time to study, to come back. And I really appreciate that thorough explanation. So thank you.
Yes, and it's always difficult with public testimony to know how that reflects on the broader community. Unfortunately, in many instances, people who are satisfied with a plan do not speak up, just like people who are satisfied with a restaurant or a hotel don't necessarily say anything about it. But anyway, it's important that we've listened to all of these, specific concerns they had, and I really appreciated the staff, explaining what was done. And I think the overriding issue is that the whole pilot study during this year. In California, we have been working for a long time on a push for universal preschool. And now we're talking about preschool in alignment with special education. But if the legislature passed a bill this year to have preschool all across California, there is no guarantee that would be a quality program if it were just thrown out. And so I know there was also, I'm sure there was frustration by people that's offered at certain sites and not offered at other sites. But the whole point is to get to develop the program in a quality way so that it can be expanded out across the district and then hopefully also out across the state. Any comments from anybody else before we vote?
Yeah, just real quick, I want to thank all the staff that have been working with the parents and the stakeholders on this. And I agree with Richard Barrera 100%. This is a work in progress. We're going to continue to engage our stakeholders, our parents. We're going to continue to listen, because in the bottom line, from my point of view, is why are we even talking about early childhood? Because we want to make it better. And we want to put all educator minds and parent minds, student minds together to talk about what's the current system and how do we improve it for better student growth and outcomes. And I think as long as we all remember that that's our common goal, we share that mission, how we get there, that's what we've got to work out. And through this work group and through continuing work together, I hope we're going to do that. Now, we always want to try to reach consensus, but unfortunately, sometimes there's going to be some people that no matter what you do, they're just not going to agree for whatever reason. So we've got to try to make a decision based on what we feel is the best for the students. So I will be supporting a staff position on this with the understanding that going forward, we're going to continue to do our best to engage all the stakeholders.
Thank you, Trustee Beiser. Okay, everyone's had an opportunity to comment. So at this time, we will vote on approving the staff plan as outlined in this presentation. So we'll begin with the Student Board Member Patterson. How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Trustee Barrera?
Aye.
Trustee Beiser?
Aye.
Trustee McQuarrie?
Aye.
Trustee Whitehurst Payne?
Aye.
And Trustee Evans, aye. That passes 5-0 by the board, along with our student board member. So that is approved, and we will look forward to the timeline that you outlined in terms of how the plan is being implemented, the report to the board in December, and so forth moving forward. But again, thank you very much, the staff. It is so clear that this is a very thoughtful process, and we really appreciate that. Okay, now we're going to move on to the board consent agenda. And on the board consent agenda, we have several resolutions. And I know we want to take some time to comment on each or many of the resolutions, as well as a few public comments. But I guess at this point, instead of voting each time, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the board consent agenda, including all of the resolutions.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Trustee Beiser. And seconded by Trustee McQuarrie. Okay, so now we have a motion on the floor. The first one obviously is approval of minutes, which is pretty routine. Now we're going to go to the second resolution, which is the resolution in the matter of recognizing Juneteenth in San Diego Unified, and this is brought forward by Evans and Whitehurst Payne. So I'd like to ask Dr. Whitehurst Payne to comment on this resolution, please.
Yes, and there is a correction on that one. We're not declaring this a holiday. We're saying that we should move forward with getting the state to say it's a holiday. I mean, we can't really declare holidays like that. So that piece of it I want to clarify. But I want to comment on this otherwise. And I want to say that in light of all the things that have been going on, we really need to look at what we're doing in our system in San Diego Unified. And I throw out several examples of things that we were working on and they've not come to fruition because of COVID. And, you know, we'll still be on the back burner because we'll have additional COVID issues that will detract from what we're trying to do. Beginning last summer, we had a middle school student in your area, John, who contacted me. His mother contacted me about an African-American student who felt that he was not being treated right in his placement in a math class. And so the superintendent worked with it. Well, her staff worked with it. Finally, I think she had to get involved. And that class, I mean, that issue went through the summer into the school year. The parent came to several board meetings and just kept the issue before us. Then because it was in the fall also, we had the issue with the Lincoln High School advanced placement. And again, you had an African-American student and others who felt that they were not being treated fairly because of placement, again, in a math class and otherwise. So the issues keep bubbling up. We're not being treated fairly. They're coming here to tell us this. We're looking at it. We're saying we're going to do a workshop, and we had one scheduled, which now I guess we'll deal with hopefully sometime this summer before the new year starts. And then we had an incident in closed session, excuse me, with one of our students at San Diego High School. Excuse me a second. And I think we all know about that incident where a student felt that he was not, well, we felt that he was not being treated fairly because he was an African-American male. And as a result of that, everyone in that room decided that we had to have some changes. And again, that workshop was coming forward, and it hasn't happened yet because of COVID-19. And now the superintendent and I are dealing with another issue with another African-American student at Morse High School. And, you know, as she puts it, it should be settled before it comes to her and she has to resolve it. At some point, I think we may have to look at the issue of whether or not we need to designate someone to just bird dog all these incidents so that we can isolate them and fix them in a rapid fashion, not so that it drags on for months and then we lose track and come back to it and on and on and on and on. We may have to identify someone whose responsibility will be to fix it. And I'm saying that now because it tends to be when the items come up, is not just one student. There are several students involved in the same thing, and we're just picking up the tip of the iceberg because they come to me finally to get some resolution. But this is what I'm throwing out to my fellow board members today and for the system to look at, is there a way that we can expedite these issues so that they don't have to keep dragging and not being resolved in a timely manner? And as we go forward, we listen to what's being proposed in the workshops that are forthcoming. Hopefully we can look at solutions so that students' needs are being met at that point in time. That was it for that one. And I guess you have a speaker on 3.
Yeah, this was on item F2. So any other comments on item F2? The only amendment that Dr. Whitehurst-Payne is that we are encouraging the state to recognize June 19th, Juneteenth as a holiday to be observed every year, as opposed to San Diego Unified is unilaterally declaring it a holiday, but that we are in support of that. So that if there are no other comments on the Juneteenth resolution, we can move on to item F3, which is the resolution matter of supporting a call for freedom summer 2020. And we can see here on this resolution, starting off with the horrible murder of George Floyd on Memorial Day, but going beyond that to 400 years of racial inequality. And finally, people are beginning to talk more openly about institutional racism as opposed to isolated incidents. I think just as Trustee Whitehurst-Payne was saying about, she finds these cases of individuals across the district who are not treated fairly in terms of their class placement, and that was the tip of the iceberg. Obviously, the George Floyd situation was the tip of the iceberg because we know that it happens, much more than that, and it's supported by various institutions directly and indirectly. And so this resolution is a multiple resolution that's directing the superintendent, along with the Department of Youth Advocacy, but particularly collaborating with students for a board workshop during the month of July. So rather than just taking a lot of unilateral preliminary quick actions right now, we wanted to have a workshop on the issue of racial justice and inequity that covers the entire territory in terms of the district addressing racial justice and equity, with an emphasis on student voice, and just as examples that are listed to include interrupting discriminatory practices related to student discipline. This has been an ongoing issue, but it needs to be highlighted. Interrupting racism on our campuses, building safe, respectful, and nurturing campuses. And this includes everything from students to staff to our police department, looking at what we are doing to maintain that atmosphere on our campuses. Interrupting discriminatory practices related to grading while moving to mastery-based grading. Obviously our original grading system in this country was set up to classify students as opposed to support students. Staff diversity, something that we certainly have talked about a lot, but we have not had a major shift in the diversity of our staff yet. progress towards becoming a restorative district. And this goes back to the whole issues of discipline and safety on the campus. How do we become a restorative and inclusive community? Progress toward becoming a trauma and resilience informed district, developing community schools. We have many ethnically based community organizations who want to have a stronger role as partners in our schools. And then implementation of ethnic studies for all. Again, on this particular item, we are at the very beginning stages of a pilot level. And obviously, we need to go much beyond that in terms of ethnic studies. In this country, we have been educated that a long time ago slavery was ended, and then some people were not alive, and Jim Crow was supposedly ended. And then we had the election of an African-American president, supposedly. Then we entered into a post-racist society, but now we have the murder of George Floyd and others, and many others, that's really highlighted the whole system and the institutional racism that exists. And all of us need to look at our blind spots. And when we're talking about ethnic studies, there's a couple of things here. One is that there's a marked difference in terms of academic achievement for students of color who participate in ethnic studies programs. But also there's the issue of all of our white students. And one of the things that's changed in this environment, in this country, is the alliance between the white population and people of color in terms of looking for racial justice and equity, so that all of us, I think one of the quotes that was on the slide last week about George Floyd had to do with, being not just not being a racist, but being an anti-racist, and what that means to actively look at each of us at our own blind spots. And obviously ethnic studies is an important way to begin doing that. So this is a pretty comprehensive approach to what we want to do in the district. And step one is really listening to our students, which is the main focus of this resolution. So any other board members want to comment on this? Trustee Brewer.
Yeah, thank you, President Evans. So I think what you just said is I think critical. The one of the most important conversations in the wake of the George Floyd murder is the conversation about it's not enough to consider yourself or to consider the institutions in our society to be non-racist. I think that's a comfortable, easy place that a lot of folks have tried to put themselves into. The question is, are we an anti-racist, in our case, institution? Is our school system anti-racist? Meaning, are we doing what we can do to actually combat and end racism? I think that's the question for us. And I don't think there is an institution in our society that is either more capable or more responsible for taking on this work of ending racism than the public school system. The public school system has the ability in the course of single generations to change society. That's what the public school system exists to do in a democracy. And so, we as a public school system often and must continue to confront institutional racism that exists in our society. So when we talk about the underfunding of public schools, that is a prime example of institutional racism. And let's not be shy about being clear that the California of the 60s and 70s that invested in public schools more than any other state in the country, and arguably more than any other society to that point, had a student body that was predominantly white. In San Diego Unified, 3/4 of our students were white in the mid-70s. And it simply can't be seen as coincidental that now in a public school system that is predominantly made up of students of color, and San Diego Unified, now 3/4 of our students are students of color, that has coincided with the underfunding, disinvesting in public education over the course of a couple of generations. And so when this board has taken a stand in support of the Schools and Communities First measure, which demands that the largest commercial property holders in our state stop using their privilege and power to underfund public schools and to hoard resources that should be going to public schools, that is a call to end institutional racism. And when we hopefully take a position tonight on repealing the ban on affirmative action, that is a call to our society to combat institutional racism. But of course, we have to begin with what is our responsibility within our own institution to combat institutional racism and to become an anti-racist district. And so the issues, that President Evans just went through are some of the key issues that we have an ability ourselves internally to address. What's the curriculum that our students are learning from? Who's teaching our students? What is the environment on campus? What does our grading system look like? What does our disciplinary system look like? All of those, we have the ability to make change. And this is certainly work that we've been doing for some time now. But I think the George Floyd murder compels all of us to work with a greater sense of urgency in moving our ability to be an anti-racist institution. And that's what this workshop is intended to be, to take a comprehensive look led by our student voice at all of the issues that we can and need to be doing better on. And of course, this isn't just simply about one workshop. This is about what will our actions be coming out of that workshop, and how will we regularly hold ourselves accountable to real progress around all of these issues. So this is about moving our district forward in acting as, I believe, the most important anti-racist institution in our city, if we do the work that we need to do.
Thank you, Trustee Barrera. Comments by other board members? Trustee Patterson.
Well, thank you, Dr. Evans. So I just want to start with, I want to thank the superintendent for having worked with for continuing to work with the Black Students Union right now in this difficult time. And I appreciate your communication with them, since I think that's so critical to getting student voice, and especially recognizing that students of color really need to be prioritized in this time period, especially as we discuss these issues. And the second thing I would ask, I don't mean to catch anybody off guard, but I just wanted to hear quickly if you could just give me a quick summary on our ethnic studies. And specifically, I recall where we were was for freshman year students, you would see that integrated into English classrooms. I know, I'm not sure if you have anybody that could comment on that, but I just know from my own personal experiences, I've just seen bits and pieces of it, but I've never been in a course that was focused on that, especially in an English course.
Superintendent Martin, could you comment on where we're at on the ethnic studies in the district?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Evans. Trustee Patterson, this was something that our board took leadership on last year when I think it was last year, can't remember what date we passed it, but they made that a graduation requirement. And so it's become an important topic to our district when the board unanimously approved it as a requirement, beginning with the freshman class that's entering high school this fall. So we have several resources that we've put in place for that. And it's our History Social Science website where you can see our resources, and the Department of Youth Advocacy and has their culturally responsive resources there. and our social justice standards also are incorporated in that. So I think we're having a more comprehensive presentation on this. That's part of the board workshop on the implementation of ethnic studies, but knowing that this was something that was passed unanimously by the board, starting with this class, this freshman class, and moving forward. We've also rewritten and looked at specifically our topics around our 9th grade Introduction to Ethnic Studies. That's an elective course for 9th graders. And we redesigned a new 11th grade U.S. History course that's titled Identity and Agency in U.S. History, that includes some of the topics that that we're most interested in making sure we're teaching throughout history, about Japanese internment camps and about the time, specifically the Tulsa riots in 1921, and redefining some of the things that we've traditionally taught in history. Those are being redone through the curriculum approach, those 2 classes in particular, but there'll be a more comprehensive update when we plan for this workshop that's being called for this evening.
But Trustee Patterson, I mean, you're right that you see little bits of it, because it really is at the beginning stages where we have a few courses in the district specifically for ethnic studies, and we're trying to incorporate ethnic studies into all of our curriculum. And so just what you said in terms of it could be in a literature course, particularly in U.S. history courses and others, that could be certified as meeting the ethnic studies requirement.
Yeah, definitely. Just to provide a little, I think this is where I do my best as a student perspective. So I've been in an education system where we haven't really seen the implementation of our own ethnic studies as a school district, but I've seen it in what was already there. And the extent of that was probably, obviously, the abolition of slavery just in U.S. history, talking about Dr. King's Civil Rights March. And then the biggest thing probably in world history this year, we extensively went over Mansa Musa and his Empire of Mali, and talking about dispelling rumors, in essence, that African ancient society was somehow more domesticated than other areas. And I would say that was a pretty big emphasis that I saw in AP World, but definitely I haven't seen a course that was centered around that. And if I were to look at my 9th grade English class, I wouldn't see many African-American authors being chosen predominantly. I would see mostly European literature and things like that.
Right.
And Trustee Patterson, Dr. Rankber is not on the panel tonight to speak to this, but she does have a lot more to say than what I just gave a very broad overview. So again, it's coming up in the board workshop, and as you and I have our weekly meetings, I can update you on some of the plans going forward, but then also be prepared to discuss further at the workshop.
Yeah. Thank you, Daphne. I'm sorry to put you on the spot for that. Just a question about this.
Professional development for all this, it's not that we're waiting. This was already approved to go forward. So the professional development on all of this has already started, so that folks are ready with this beginning of this school year.
Okay, other board member comments at this point on this resolution for the Freedom Summer 2020? Okay, we have one public comment. Ms. Stoltz, would you please read that?
Yes, specifically for F3. This is from Sharon Camarillo. I am grateful to the board for considering this resolution, and I am incredibly grateful to our thousands of dedicated teachers, staff, and administrators throughout our San Diego schools. We, for far too long, have left the onus of providing a more complete education on social justice to our community's marginalized groups. Mothers and fathers and other caregivers have often had to add further clarification and significance to racial/gender inequities and unique achievements. It is due time that our education officials throughout the district help bear this responsibility. We are doing every single student and every single family a disservice if we do not pass this resolution. Over the last few weeks, many have expressed personal and public outcry over injustice. We have heard too many adults admit ignorance to the reach of inequities in our country. As educators, we cannot continue to sit idly by and wait for the next generation of adults to be paralyzed by ignorance. Teachers are some of the most powerful shapers of society. They must teach more about the impacts of systemic racism and social injustice on our modern society. They must promote inclusion and work to both implicitly and explicitly break down harmful stereotypes. Students must learn to appreciate and celebrate the diversity of our communities. We cannot regulate the culture and history of any marginalized group to a day or a month. Multicultural education is inclusive. It is infused throughout every part of the curriculum, classroom culture, and school events, so much so that each and every student feels honored, respected, and seen within the structure and workings of their public school. When this resolution is passed, teachers should receive proper support to implement this change. No, it might not be easy, but rarely does easy bring about change. We as adults need to show children what it's like to do the work to make change in order to push a new, more welcoming narrative in our communities. Even when moments like these present themselves, we have to show that we are willing to practice what we preach. We have to be ready to evolve. We have to be ready to demonstrate that we are truly no place for hate. We have to be ready to show we will not allow hate to fester. San Diego families are counting on you to do what's necessary to better fulfill our district mission, to prepare students to lead and participate in the society of tomorrow. The mission does not mention the comforts and fears of today, but lends a hopeful eye toward a society tomorrow. If you pass this vote, you're helping to ensure that society is more just and more whole, one where every student can say, I am seen and welcome here.
Thank you, Ms. Stoltz. So it's easy to point fingers at racism over there, and we've certainly seen instances of racism in police institutions, but also, as Trustee Barrera has pointed out, in our own educational system. And our own educational system is headed by 5 members of the Board of Education. And so we bear responsibility, and someone could turn off their mic because it's echoing. But anyway, we bear responsibility as the members of the Board of Education. I have received emails from students or former students who have said, these are the racist kind of activities that have happened on your campuses under your watch while you were on the school board. So we have a lot of listening to do and a lot of soul searching ourselves in terms of what actions we have taken and what actions we have failed to take. Okay, we'll move on then to item F4, which is the resolution in the matter of supporting Assembly Constitutional Amendment 5, which is about the infamous Proposition 209, which was the ban on affirmative action in California, which has resulted in a degradation of participation by people of color in our educational institutions and other parts of society. Trustee Barrera, do you want to say anything on this?
Yeah, thank you, President Evans. So, I can just speak for my own personal experience, many of our experiences. So I went to the UC system in the mid-'80s, and I can tell you that the UCLA campus where I started as a freshman, UCSD campus that I finished at, were much more diverse places in the mid-'80s than they are today. And they weren't anywhere near as diverse as they should have been in the mid-'80s. And so the fact that we've gone backwards, and that's just the UC system, and then we talk about the Cal State system and we talk about our workplaces, is a direct result of what I consider a racist proposition, Prop 209, that passed appealing to racist impulses in society, and the result of which severely restricted opportunity for young people throughout the state, and obviously for young people coming out of the San Diego Unified School District. This ban on affirmative action should have been repealed a long time ago. But I appreciate Dr. Shirley Weber in the Assembly and other leaders, Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez and others, that recognize now is the time to take this before the voters and say once and for all, let's undo one of many examples of institutional racism in our society, and let's start to create real opportunities for young people again.
Thank you. Trustee Whitehurst Payne.
I thank Mr. Barrera for sharing his personal experience. And let me just say that I spent 2 years officially working as a affirmative action program administrator here in this system, and then really 17 years of really doing the work. But I say that to say that ever since I've been on the board and before, I've really pushed us to look at who it is we're hiring. Are we just going for people who look like us? Are we going for everybody and giving everybody the opportunity? Do folks feel like there's not the opportunity for all, that it only exists for certain few and certain groups? I know at one point we checked on our central office and looked at the diversity and were within compliance with that. But the overall perception that for some people, this system is not available to them. In fact, just today I said to the superintendent, should I encourage some folks to go outside the system in order to be considered for opportunities, because we appear to favor folks from the outside who look more like folk in the system rather than for those coming in from the within being trained. And Mr. Barrera will vouch for that we've asked for a training program so that folks in the system can get some training and move up the ladder, as well as those coming in from the outside. One of the things that affirmative action will do is to monitor it, track it. Now we don't really have an idea about who, how many, or whatever, but if we have actual hard data that we can look at on a regular basis, then I think we'll all feel a little bit better about this, because there's no question about it that some folks have been denied. And I just speak from my own personal experience, not only working here, but even from the segregated South. So I wholeheartedly support this notion. Thank you.
Trustee Patterson.
Thank you for that, Trustee Barrera and Trustee Whitehurst Payne. Very, very informative for me and for everybody watching. I had the privilege to talk to a group of students yesterday about F4 specifically. I reached out to them to gain some advice on it and to learn about what some of the student input was from people around me. And it made me happy to see overwhelmingly that I saw that students, I had African-American students and I had white students on my call. And it was very fascinating to hear the support for it definitively. And as I said, overwhelmingly, every student supported it. But one of the things two things they brought up specifically that I wanted to share. The first one was the idea that educator diversity in our school systems. I had one student say, I was shocked to see that I've never had an African-American teacher at all in all of my years in school system. And I believe he was in 8th grade, if I'm correct. And the other piece that I learned, or that I had students talk to me about, was the diversity of their peers and the students within them in the school system. They saw that in the education system they're in, they really don't feel that they have a diverse student body. And one of the reasons that ACA 5 is so important and that affirmative action is so important is obviously, in addition to really empowering students and creating an equal opportunity of outcome, it also predicates on the idea that diversity creates an important system, and diversity creates an important situation where students understand each other's difficulties and are able to use that information to create a more tolerant society. And I think that microaggressions build in situations where we're with people that all look the same as us. And I think that it's something that we have to discuss, and we have to look at and ask ourselves, are we doing a good enough job, or is segregation happening to some extent? And we've seen these desegregation movements were pushed very, very hard just a few years ago, and we're seeing a shift. And I recognize that there are difficulties and discussions that need to be had to make something like this happen. But if we value diversity at the college level, it's critical that we value diversity at our own level in secondary education.
Thank you, Trustee Patterson. And we will now move on to the next.
President Evans,
yes.
I would just like to make a couple real quick remarks.
Okay, I didn't see your hand in your picture.
No,
sorry.
that's okay. I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand in here, and I couldn't.
The still photo.
And so I just have a couple of quick remarks. First of all, there is segregation in public schools across the United States of America now. We've talked about it. We've worked to try to mitigate it in San Diego Unified by really focusing on, making sure that all students are taking the same kinds of courses. There is a deep, dark secret in public schools across the United States and around the world, not just in the US, of segregation, where there are a second tier of courses called honors English, honors history, accelerated math. And what's happened is, no big secret, the students in those classes are all white and Asian for the most part. And if you take a look at the remedial classes or the general ed coursework, it's predominantly all Black and brown kids in those classrooms. And research shows that's not good. I also wanted to comment on Trustee Barrera's remarks about colleges and universities. I had a student, I had her for 7th grade algebra and 9th grade algebra 2. She went on to Harvard University on a full ride scholarship. Mr. Barrera and some others, even I think Dr. McQuarrie, got to meet her. She's a fantastic person. She comes from South Bay, Hispanic, Latino descent. And she went to Harvard University as a part of a diversity program where they're trying to reach out to deserving folks. And she is more than deserving. She's received perfect scores on math since I had her in 7th grade. And when she went to Harvard, she realized that, and she said it in her own words, everybody's white. And I had this perception because Harvard has issued press releases. They've had press conferences. They're giving 100% scholarships to minority applicants from disadvantaged backgrounds. That's the public line. That's not the reality. She said the only Black person that she got to meet was one of Obama's daughters, who they had some classes together at Harvard. And I just hope that that's a message we think about, because a lot of folks argued against it, perceiving that it was reverse discrimination, that somehow eligible, qualified white people were being denied college opportunities. And we know the reality is that, in fact, instead of figuring out how we cut the pie up, we need a bigger piece of pie. So everybody that is eligible to get into a college can. And we've got to, I think, use what Dr. Sharon Whitehurst Payne shared several months ago from the Bible, and that's Luke 15. And in Luke 15 in the Bible, it talks about the shepherd that had 100 sheep. One of the sheep strayed from the herd and was lost, was endangered, was in threat. That sheep's life was in danger. It was so the shepherd left the 99 sheep to go save the life of that sheep that was in danger. And people say, well, why would you leave 99 sheep to go find one? Because that's the sheep that needs it. And that's why Black Lives Matter.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Beiser. And we will now move on to the next resolution.
Hold it.
Oh, Dr. McQuarrie, there's your hand. Go ahead. You're muted, Dr. McQuarrie. We can't. There you go.
How's that?
There you. That's good.
Cool. So I think what my comments are an effort to link the two resolutions and the third one, of course. But it seems to me that it's so sad that it sometimes takes a horrific situation to finally bring awareness to a problem. And I think this is an opportunity for us to be proactive. So as it is said sometimes about the straw that broke the camel's back, we have a situation here where it was a knee on the neck that broke through a national complacency and the acceptance of social and economic injustice, and it exposed the systemic and institutional racism that exists. So now that this nation has awoken to this systemic problem, it's imperative for us to take action to become an anti-racist district. We need to expand our programs that demonstrate that the San Diego Unified School District is a no place for hate, has a robust ethnic studies program, and definitely practices affirmative action.
Thank you. The next item is related to what's been happening lately in the news in the matter of supporting a prohibition on the use of tear gas and projectile munitions on peaceful protesters. I'll ask Mr. Visor to speak on this one, please.
Yeah, thank you, President Evans, and I want to appreciate Trustee Richard Barrera for co-sponsoring this resolution. You know, I don't want to go through and read the resolution. Just the bottom line is there's a couple different things. First of all, you know, a lot of the things that are being used on peaceful protesters, in my opinion, are excessive. I remember seeing lots of protests with people with machine guns and weapons slung over their shoulder, you know, verbally accosting and assaulting police officers, and they were never gassed. They were never beat up with billy clubs. They never had a billy club whack them over the face so blood was pouring down their head. Those protesters were allowed to protest, like all protesters should be. One of the other things that I've, you know, really wanted to make sure that the public understands is that tear gas that is commonly used on peaceful protesters or citizens of the United States, if you use it against the Taliban, that is a war crime. It is a war crime to use tear gas in war. So why is it allowed to be used on a country's own people? That's a question that we really need to think about. Especially, I believe, in light of the fact that the pandemic and COVID-19, any kind of aspirant that forces people to have to cough and spew out mucus and take off their face mask almost seems to be targeting people in the worst way. The people that deploy an agent like this in war would be taken up at the Hague for war crimes tribunal. But in the United States, we pretend it's okay, normal, it's justified. When is a war crime ever justified when it's employed on our own people?
Thank you, Trustee Barrera. We have no public comments on this particular item, and there are no other comments. I will move on to the final resolution, which is resolution in support of the Student Bill of Rights, also brought by Trustee Barrera and Trustee Patterson. And rather than speaking on it myself, I'm just going to ask Trustee Patterson to talk about this resolution.
Yeah, thank you. So the Student Bill of Rights the idea was originally brought to me on a statewide campaign. We have a wonderful youth-led organization out of the Bay Area called GenUp, and they've been working with student board members across the state to work to sponsor student bills of rights. And the idea behind it is that students have fundamental rights in their education system. They have important aspects that are critical to them being able to have a successful education. Just some of the more relevant ones that I want to bring up specifically at this moment. I want to look at, let me find it. We're looking at 14. All students have the right to learn in an environment that does not discriminate against them and reflects the variety of backgrounds in the student body. What we're talking about here is the ability of a student to learn safely and to feel comfortable in their learning environment. And while a lot of these things are supposed to already be happening, students really don't know or have a method of recourse to discuss when they feel their rights have been violated And when they're not explicitly stated, we all know it's much easier to take them away. And I'm proud to be in San Diego Unified, where I think a lot of these are being upheld, but putting them in writing and solidifying them as something that students are entitled to and gain as simply being a part of the education system is critical to the success of our school district and to the success of all of our students. If we want all of our students to be successful, we need to provide them with rights that they have so they can stand up for these rights and they can discuss them and speak out if they feel that they're being violated. And there are so many different ways you can go about discussing if you feel these rights are violated, from starting with school staff to going straight to the Board of Education. You have methods to speak out, and you have methods to discuss issues that you feel are pertinent to the success of your education system. I'm here because I'm a primary stakeholder of education. I'm somebody that experiences the effects that this board makes. And I'm here to represent all students. And what I want to say by having this is saying that you have an outlet and you have the ability to speak out when you need assistance in your education system, and you have fundamental rights that are there to protect your education. I'm proud to say that this morning, Los Angeles Unified School District also passed their Student Bill of Rights, which was very exciting. So we will be the second school district to join along with this. I'm very happy with that. I believe we have a few different public comments from students across San Diego County that felt very passionate about this. And once again, a big thank you to Bay Area student organization GenUp for helping lead this and providing me with an amazing outline to begin and work to customize with the students of San Diego Unified.
Thank you, Trustee Patterson, and for your work on this, both within the district and across the state with this Student Bill of Rights. And we do have some public comments on this. Trustee Barrera, do you have the copies of these comments or not? Okay, so if you go flip through them to item F6, what I'm going to ask is each of us to read 2 comments, and then we'll go around. And please limit the comments to 150 words, which is about 10 or 12 lines, so that we can get them all in.
Okay, our first comment on item F6 is from Citizen. This resolution states, all students in San Diego Unified School District have the right to receive an education, including an elementary, middle, and high school education with a diploma. Students are threatened with not getting diplomas if they don't pay debts. Students earn their diplomas. It is wrong for San Diego Unified to deny a diploma by using it as a weapon to collect money. It's a cruel, long-time practice that should be eliminated. San Diego Unified burdens children who have no control over their parents' money with debts for such items as lost books from 5th grade and then presented the bill as seniors. Another practice is extracurricular activities and curricular events that teachers and coaches collect fees, such as spirit packs. Students are told by the teacher they are expected to pay or they are not team players. The next comment is also from Citizen, but this is not the same person that submitted the first comment. All students have the right to express themselves and their beliefs through oral, written, artistic, and fashion. Does this mean that students can wear any kind of clothing they choose for self-expression, such as hats, t-shirts, jackets, PPE masks depicting pictures or slogans they want? Statements such as Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, Jesus loves you, costumes of a sexual nature, or perversions. You may be opening up a Pandora's box.
Okay, the next comment is from Life California, who is in 11th grade at High Tech High, Chula Vista. My name is Life California. I'm going into my junior year at High Tech High, Chula Vista, and I'm Director of Southern Organizing for GenUp San Diego. I support the Student Bill of Rights because on a fundamental level, each student deserves to be heard, be safe, be seen, and to have equal distributed resources amongst them. We as students may make up only 24% of the population, but we are 100% of our future. When we invest in students and education through any means, we are setting up a future that benefits society as a whole. For too long, we have been shortchanged in our schools. By accepting the Student Bill of Rights, we will be able to feel respected and most importantly, safe in school, the place we are at just as much as we are at in our own homes. And the next one is from Patrick Mel de la Rosa, 11th grade at Sweetwater High School, Director of Outreach and Artistic Content for Gen Up San Diego. I support the Student Bill of Rights as it entitles all students, regardless of who they are, entitled to a safe learning environment and provides them resources to ensure a good education under the proper environment.
Okay. Hello, my name is Laisha Osuna, and I am a rising senior at Hilltop High School. I serve as the Director of Political Affairs for the Gen Up San Diego chapter. Gen Up is a student-led, student-run advocacy organization primarily striving for youth representation in key educational policy efforts. The Student Bill of Rights is a crucial step to ensuring that students' rights are protected by their represented school board and district. In addition, adopting a Bill of Rights ensures students are equipped with equal resources in adverse and diverse environments so that no one is exempt from safely continuing their education. Adopting this resolution will set a precedent to other school districts so they can also continue to protect and put students first. And next is, my name is Angela Yu. I attend Westview High School and I'm serving as Director of Technology of Gen Up San Diego. It is necessary that students in all schools feel that they are in a safe, supportive environment in order for students to become educated and to recognize the importance of education. This is why I support item F6, as it ensures that no matter a student's background or situation, their community is always actively pushing to eliminate all obstacles which are compromising their education. I hope you take item F6 into consideration and think of all the bright minds who should be learning but can't due to either financial reasons or safety concerns. Finally, if this item passes, I hope you will inform students in San Diego Unified of this bill so they recognize their basic right to education.
We have a comment from Emily Howe. My name is Emily Howe. I'm a rising 11th grader from Westview High School. Currently, I am the Director of Fundraising and Development for the Gen Up San Diego chapter. The Gen Up organization advocates for better education while continuing to emphasize the power of the student's voice. The Student Bill of Rights continues to acknowledge the basic rights that students are entitled to. I support it because it highlights that students will be promised such things as a safe learning environment and many different resources. Having these basic rights emphasizes the importance of every student in our community, making sure that all students know that their voices matter. Schools are meant to be a safe place where students are promised the best education they can receive. Shouldn't all students know what their basic rights are as students of this community?
Okay. Caitlin Hall, and if we could turn off the mics. Okay. I, Caitlin Hall, a sophomore at Westview High School, admit I was once negligent to the prominent issues faced within the education system. However, as Secretary of Gen Up San Diego, I have witnessed the frequent discrepancies within San Diego's own flawed education system. Equal education should no longer be regarded as a privilege, but as a basic right, regardless of uncontrollable factors such as race or socioeconomic background. It is imperative our rights as students are not only recognized, but also respected. Student voices are too often suppressed and ignored. But as the San Diego Unified School District Board, your decision today has the power to give a voice to these silenced students. And the next one is from Ethan Collier. I am a rising senior at Hilltop High School. I'm the president of Gen Up San Diego. Gen Up worked with your student board member to create the Student Bill of Rights. This will, in essence, ensure all students have access to a safe environment, resources, and everything needed to prosper in their education. Today, we are asking you to support this Bill of Rights as it would be a landmark victory for not only San Diego Unified students, but students across California. And that concludes the public comments on that item. Are there any other board comments before we move to vote on all of these resolutions? If not, then I would just say, I think a fair question many people watching would ask, well, it's all fine and good to pass a bunch of resolutions and say a lot of nice words, but where is the action? And the whole point of passing these resolutions is for us to be held accountable to what we are saying. As Trustee Barrera said, in July, we're going to have a workshop to begin addressing these issues and then come up with a plan for the coming year in terms of how we are going to address this. And in terms of equal rights, social justice, and racial discrimination and discrimination of all kinds, our first step is to get all of our students back in school, because the students who have been hurt most by the pandemic, both from a health point of view, from a financial point of view, and also from an educational point of view with distance learning, have been those disenfranchised students. And that is why it is important that we get all of our students back in school. So that's the first step, and then we will continue on from there. So with that, we will vote on all of the above resolutions. I will start with Student Board Member Patterson.
Aye.
Okay. Trustee Barrera?
Aye.
Trustee Beiser?
Aye.
Trustee McQuarrie?
Aye.
Trustee Whitehurst Payne?
Aye.
And I already pushed my green button, but it didn't do anything. So I vote aye also, and that passes unanimously by the Board of Education. And so now we have passed resolutions to which we must hold ourselves accountable. Okay, at this point, we have item G1, ratification of the MOU with SDA for the already bargained COVID-19 pandemic MOU.
President Evans, can I move items G1 through H1, 2, and 3?
Yes, items on H1 are the district operations items for easements on sidewalks and so forth. So, okay.
Apologies, we can't do that because I can't vote on G1, so you have to move them separately.
Okay, so we'll stick to G1 then. Trustee Whitehurst Payne, did you have a comment?
I just want to aye and move it on.
Okay, you just want to get it over with.
I want to second it and move it on.
Oh, second and move it on. Okay, but it's going to be in alphabetical order. Okay, so the item for which Trustee Patterson cannot vote is the collective bargaining item, correct? Okay. Yeah. So let's vote on item G1. Trustee Barrera?
Aye.
Beiser?
Aye.
McQuarrie?
Aye.
Whitehurst Payne?
Aye.
Evans, aye, and that passes 5-0. And we now move to, is our motion on items H1 to H3?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
moved by Trustee Barrera and seconded by Whitehurst Payne. It was a close call as far as who got in first. Okay, we will now, if there are no comments, we will vote on this item. Student Board Member Patterson?
Aye.
Trustee Barrera?
Aye.
Beiser?
Aye.
McQuarrie?
Aye.
Whitehurst Payne?
Aye.
Evans, aye, and that passes 5-0 as well. We now move very quickly to the superintendent's consent agenda. Certain items were previously withdrawn. Items I-31, 54, 62, 74, and 80. And we have, let me see here, we have a public comment on one item. So is there, let's first of all see, is there a motion on the superintendent's consent agenda?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Trustee Barrera and seconded by Trustee Beiser for the superintendent's consent agenda. And now we will hear one public speaker on item I-52, which is the first amendment to the agreement with Montelato's Nelson Murphy to continue providing professional communication services district-wide. Ms. Stoltz, could you read this comment?
Yes, we have one comment from citizen. This $65,500 agreement with Montelato's Nelson Murphy Incorporated to continue providing professional communication services district-wide should not be approved. This budget had an $84 million deficit in January. The district has a communications department that should be doing this work. Oppose this contract.
That concludes the public comment. If there are no comments from any board members on the superintendent's consent agenda, we will vote on that.
Can I actually ask? Just understanding that public comment, what is the specific purpose of this communications rather than our general communications? Then I think it should be addressed.
Okay. So this is item, what number was this again? Item I-52. So superintendent, do we have a staff member present who can address this issue on item I-52, which I am looking up right now, 49, 53. Item 52 is for $65,500 and collaborate with the district to document ongoing work at achieving district missions as outlined in Vision 2020 for a purpose of communicating this work to the public in an open and transparent manner at regular intervals via electronic print media. And this was done by the Chief Public Information Officer. Superintendent, do you have any other details on this item?
Yes, thank you, President Evans. Last year, this organization helped us to develop the weekly #BetterSDE Blast, and which was recognized for excellence by the San Diego Press Club recently. And this year, they've helped us develop our COVID-19 communications, including the microsite to help parents with online learning, and the site address is san-diego-distancelearning.org. They've also helped publicize our work with the San Diego Food Bank to help us feed families and food and nutrition services and getting that word out to a wide community.
Thank you. Yeah, sounds very productive.
Yeah, I'm aware that it was very important in terms of getting out the word about distance learning that we were not easily able to do with our current website. So that was helpful.
You were very familiar with that.
Yes, my brother.
And President Evans, if I may, just real quick, one of the biggest challenges that we had, when Dr. Evans and Trustee Barrera first got on the board was communicating our message to the community and the parents about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and a variety of other things. And so this is really, taking it to the point where, the community that said, what is the school district doing? And so then I believe that this communication expenditure is essential in our relationship with the community, parents, and students and staff.
Okay, thank you for that comment. And with that, we will vote on the consent agenda. Trustee Patterson.
Aye.
Barrera.
Aye.
Beiser.
Aye.
McQuarrie.
Aye.
Whitehurst-Payne.
Aye.
And Evans, aye. So the superintendent's consent agenda is approved 5-0. Okay, this concludes the agendized business of the board. And now we're going to move on to non-agenda public testimony. And we have about, I believe, 6 speakers on this item. So we will be able, on different topics, so we'll be able to hear from all of them as long as we stick with the limits in terms of the length of the item. Ms. Stoltz.
All right, our first non-agenda comment is from Citizen. Teachers that have never logged in or communicated with students has led to many parent complaints to the Human Resources Office. The superintendent's agreement with the union that no teacher can be held accountable and no audit can be done is detrimental to students. The superintendent should rescind the 3.7% raise given in January, give basic medical benefits packages to employees, and have employees pay the extra cost of the more expensive medical packages. A dependents audit previously saved $4 million after 719 dependents were found ineligible. Another dependents audit must be done, and employees must reimburse the school district if receiving medical benefits for ineligible persons. With an $84 million deficit in January, the board must make responsible decisions to get through this economic crisis. Children should be the top priority in budget negotiations for everyone in this terrible, terrible year. The next comment is from Tianyang Wang, and it's one sentence. Please don't open the school to risk kids' health. The next comment is from Francisca Salcedo. My 8-year-old attends Clay Elementary. He has an IEP and was just reclassified to English proficient. We are also a low-income family. It is very important that all students receive additional academic and emotional support in the fall. Each campus will need reading and math specialists as well as additional school psychologists to work directly with students who by then will have been out of in-person school education for almost 6 months. Thank you. The next comment is from Virginia Coran. I'm a retired teacher with the district, 38 years. I served as a mentor. I have seen this curriculum and attempted to introduce it to a group of 6th grade students at church. The students were shocked at the first few words concerning the marital act. They knew what I was speaking about. They were clearly uncomfortable talking about it in a class setting, traumatized. The most important thing any human will ever do is become a parent. We do not need to be using material that shocks and upsets students when they are learning about this most important role. Please look into other curriculum. I am happy to help you find other providers. The next comment is from Alyssa Sanchez. Open the schools, please. And the final non-agenda comment is from Negret Nico. I am a school counselor at Golden Hill K-8. I have been with the district since 2006. I'm in favor of finally bringing the last schools onto the traditional calendar along with the rest of the district. Over the years, it has become more difficult being one of the last schools on the year-round schedule. Since there are so few schools left, we often are overlooked and do not have time to meet deadlines such as wellness committee, etc., miss important functions, and miss opportunities for trainings and workshops. Pre-COVID-19 was difficult, especially for the 8th grade students at Golden Hill looking to enroll at their home school, San Diego High, which is on a traditional calendar. My students have missed many activities, including tours, open houses, and deadlines due to being on a vacation. It also has made it hard to do articulation since we are in school until almost the end of July. Being on a year-round while so many schools are on traditional also has made it hard for schools to keep staff at school sites since many of their children may be on a different calendar. At my school, it has become more apparent the impact it has on our staff, with many valuable staff members opting to move to a traditional calendar school.
Okay, that concludes the non-agenda public comments. And before we conclude the meeting, I would like to announce a special award. This award is just invented by me right now, and it is for the board member of the month. And I hope none of the other board members were offended by not getting it. But this is being awarded to student board member Zachary Patterson. I have received many comments from people from the last couple of meetings who have talked about this most intelligent, articulate, and compassionate board member who has raised important questions and made us think at the same time that he is representing the student voice. And the reason I'm doing this is because in the future, when Zachary moves on to bigger and better things, I can say, back in the day, I gave him an award. So anyway, thank you very much, Zachary, for all the work that you are doing with the board. And at this point, our next board meeting will be next Tuesday at 5 p.m. And at that point, which is the last day of our fiscal year, we will be approving the budget, the most important budget for reopening our schools for next school year. So our board meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much for the people who watched and everybody who was attending. Good night.
Congrats on the Evans.